All right, thank you everyone for joining. Today, I'm gonna hold a small session about an hour and a half, something like that, about getting started with Laravel. Before we get into it, I would want to first show you a demo of what we're going to build today. So let me log out there. We're going to build a really small app where we're going to have an authentication. We're going to create a user. And when we get inside, we're going to make a new page called Notebook. And then throughout this notebook, we are going to create a new object, a new note. We're going to save it to the database. We're going to edit it, save it again, update the record, and we're also going to delete it from the database. So let's get right into it. Okay, so the first steps is obviously the installation. If you want to create a new Laravel project, I recommend installing the Laravel installer globally, so you can create that project everywhere you want, so you don't have to always specify where to create it. So I already created the project and it's already set up. We just have to go right into it later on. But these are the first steps. You want to first install the installer globally. And after that, you want to compose a create project, Laravel/Laravel, and then the app name that you want. For this one, we called it Notebook, this app. After the installation is done, it's going to look something like this. You're gonna get the files and everything, but we'll get to this later. After the installation is done, we can go ahead and create a database. I already created it. It's called Notebook. Right now it's empty, which is fine. We're going to link this database to the application. And the way we link it, it's actually, let me switch it like this so you guys can see it better. Okay, so we have to go into the .env file. This .env file, it's the file that it's mainly the settings for the entire applications. As you can see, there are variables here which go back and forth to the config files. And instead of going through each file and changing, Laravel came up with this strategy of making just one file where you can set up your application this way. So right now, let's add a database name we just created to this variable, and that is called Notebook. All right. So now the application, it's linked to this database. We have now to add the tables to the database. Now, Laravel comes with pre-written tables, for example, the users, password resets, and another table called fail jobs. So the way we populate this database, we have to run PHP. First, we have to be in the folder, like you see here. I'm in the application right now. So we have to run PHP artisan migrate. And this is going to migrate all these files inside the database. Now, Laravel is just great. It comes with so many commands that you just have to explore it by yourself. So many commands. You can make channels, you can make components, controllers, you can make models, notifications. It's just really, really rich in terms of resources. I'm gonna go only through a couple of them today. I'm not gonna go through all of them, but just wanted to let you know that there are a lot of commands available within a PHP artisan. So Now that we ran PHP artisan migrate, we can go back to the database and refresh, and we can see we have these new tables added, right? We have another table called migrations, which holds the name of the files inside these migration folders. So next time when I run, for example, again, PHP artisan migrate, there is nothing to migrate because these files already match these files. So in case a new migration comes in the migrations folder, that's going to be detected that it's not part of this migration table, and it's going to migrate it. Now, if we go and just look at it, so this is notebook.test. This is how my local machine is reading it, that test. We can see we don't have anything. It's just a blank page, Laravel. This is the basic page that you get when you make a new project in Laravel. So let's go ahead and add the authentication. What's nice about Laravel, they made a package that they already created a authentication for us, implemented with the migration of users table. So all we have to do is just require this package inside our application. And after we do that, we can see this composer.json holds all the packages that it needs. See, it just added the Laravel/UI package. The composer, you can add composer packages, or if you want, you can add Node.js packages. They support both of them, which is just great. So after this package is being done, we are going to have to run this command, php artisan UI view auth. Artisan UI view auth. So what this does, this gets it's fetching some files from the package UI, and it's adding it to my files, to my project. So right now, see, we got a view scaffolding installed successfully. So we have to run npm install. So it's going to install everything that needs for that view scaffolding. And after this npm install is done, we will have to compile the entire application by running npm run dev. And just a quick demo, if we refresh it, we see that the app added a login and a register button. So if we go to login, this is how it looks right now because it's not compiled. So after we compile it, it's going to be really quick. It's a very small app. We will see that we're getting all the CSS needed for this page to fully load. And then this is what Laravel came up with as the authentication, the default authentication for Laravel. All right, what else? That's about it on the first step of the installation and setting up the project. Do you guys have any questions so far? All right, we can move on to the next slide then. Okay, let's talk about some folder structures that we're gonna look in today. I'm going to work with the app folder, with the database folder, the resources folder, and the routes folder. Now, there's more to talk about them, and I'm gonna go in more information about them as I'm going throughout the app. So before that, let's talk about the MVC now, the model view controller, the model view controller architecture. The way that I present it like this, it's the easiest way that it made sense to me as a developer and how each thing connects to each other. So, okay, let's look at some details. What is the model, right? The model is the table in the database. When you create a model for your application, it's actually linked to a table in your database. So for example, we are going to make a note model that's going to be linked to a note table. So every time we want to query the note table, we have to use the note model. And what's nice is that we have to create a protected variable called fillable that contains the columns you have in this table, except the ones that are filled automatically, obviously the timestamps and the auto incrementation IDs. Pretty much what this actually means is that every time you make an insert to the database, it's always going to check this fillable. For example, if someone tries to cross-site a request for this model and they want to add a first name or something like that, they're going to get an error because that name is not in the fillable array, and it's obviously not in the database too. So this is a nice layer of protection that they came up with. Now, see, the model is first. We have to create a model that's going to be linked to the database, and from there, we're going to use the model inside the controller. But until we get to the controller, we need a route. Now, what is the route? The route is actually the URL. Like you can see here, let me first log in so you have a better understanding of it. So good, I registered, it logged me in, all good. As you can see, the route is /home, right? Now, this is how you create a route. You specify the method you want for that route, and that method takes a URL and the function. The URL can be, for example, like you saw, /home, and then the function that is going to return a view. And what the view is actually a file that's going to display the HTML that you want to show to the user. You can either do it inline, like this, or you can point to a controller, to a function inside of a controller. And this is where it just goes one to another. So from the route, after we access the /nodes, it's going to point to the controller index. So if we go to the controller now, a controller contains the functions needed to process the data from the database, which is the model, and also return a view with the processed data back to the user as the view. So when you access that /home or /nodes, this function is going to be ran. And what this is going to do, this is going to be the model, and the model is going to take all the data from the table, from the database, and all that data is going to be assigned to these variable nodes. After this is complete, we're going to return the view with the variable nodes that contains the data of this variable back and forth. And after this is done, the controller is going to return this view. So if we go inside the view, we can manipulate the data we got back from the controller. And like you saw, it's actually this nodes variable. So inside the view, we get to play with the $nodes. And I'm going to show later on how this nodes looks when you have multiple nodes in your database. So within each node, you want to maybe display, like an example here, a card with the title of the node and the note, whatever the description is. But if there is nothing, we're just going to tell the user that the notebook is empty. That's pretty much it. And after this is done and everything is successful, everything becomes a loop. Every time you make a button for a route, that button has to point to a controller, which is going to use a model. And then inside that controller, the model is going to be processed and then it's going to return that data inside the view, where in the view, you are going to play around with the data and you can do whatever you want with it. It's sky is the limit. You can do whatever you want. So if you guys have any questions regarding the MVC, please ask. All right, then let's move on. Oops. Let's start with making an actual model. So I'm gonna bring my terminal up here, and we're gonna use PHP artisan make model, and we're gonna call it, like I said, note. Now the -mcr is optional. If you want to only create a model, you just do it like this. If you want to create additional things around the model, for example, the migration, a controller, and also resources for that specific controller, you can do -mcr. So when you run this, in the app folder, a node model has been created. Right now it's empty. In the database folder, a migration has been created. It has just the default ID, auto increment, and timestamps. And also a controller has been created right here. And like I specified with the R, I got resources in this controller that I can use for whatever I want. Usually, all of these functions are specifically for the CRUD operation, when you want to show, create, store, edit, update, and destroy a resource in your database. So after this is done, let's run a migration. Actually, first we have to add the columns that we want to the new table. All right, so we're going to the migration, right? This table nodes is going to be linked to the node model. So let's see what we can add to this table. The way it works, you have to specify the type of the column first. So let's say we want a user ID. That's an integer. And inside this function, we give the name of the column that we want. So it's going to be user ID. If you want a string, we have to say string, and then the name of the column that we want. So let's say title. Let's copy that, make another column called note. And then that's pretty much it. This is all we need for our small application. After we are done with the table configuration, we can go ahead and migrate. If we say PHP artisan migrate status, you can see that those three migration has been migrated to the database, but this one, the last one, hasn't been migrated yet. This is another command that PHP artisan provides. So if we run this, that has been sent to the database. We can refresh it. Great. We get the database here. We get a table, sorry, with the user ID, title, and the note columns. Perfect. So after we finish this, we can go back. We can just close these tabs we don't need. And we can go and now play with the actual code. So before I start getting inside actual code, if you guys have questions so far, please ask. Okay. All right, let's move on then. I want to show you the app layout first. Let me change this like that, and then this like that. This is the structure of the entire application when you look at it. It has the HTML, obviously, the head and the body, but it also has a yielded content. This is where all our views are going to be getting in. So just for some cleaning up right here, let's say we want to take out this navigation because it's just too big. We're going to make a new folder called includes. We're going to make a new file called nav.blade.php. Within this file, we can just take this entire container and dump it in this new file. Save it and then just include it. Now, what's nice about include and, for example, about extends is that the root folder, it's this view folder right here. So every time we want to include a file or extend a layout, we have to start from the view. This is the root. So from the root view, I'm gonna say includes. I want to specify this folder and then include the file nav. And then when we refresh, it's fine. Nothing changed. It's still working as good as before. So let's now go inside the nav and create ourselves some links here. Like I said, when we start this MVC relationship, we need to make a button for a route. So I'm just going to quickly grab some links and add them right here. Now that I added these links, a link is for the home page, which is this page. This is the home page. And I made another link that's for the notebook, where we're going to see all the notebooks. I mean, not all the notebooks. It's going to be the single notebook, but we're going to see all the notes inside that notebook. So if we refresh, an error. Now, what's nice about Laravel is that you cannot create a route and not define it. For example, you cannot have leftover routes if you're not going to use them. That's why we have to add the routes if we want to use a route. I'm just going to copy the routes that we are going to use today right here. And I'm going to go later on and talk about each route and how each route works. If we refresh now, after we save, it works perfectly. But notice this. Now, this says buttons.home and then buttons.notebook, right? It doesn't really look good. So what happens is that we're using the language function that Blade provides us. What this language does, inside the resources, we have a language folder which holds an English folder, .en. You can have multiple folders here called, can be French, can be German, it can be whatever you want. So it's also in the system, you can make it that, you can make a setting, the user can change the language of the application, and when they change it, you must have the same files within each folder language that have these routes too. So what this does, this is pointing to a buttons folder, file, my bad. And inside that buttons, we have a notebook, a property. So inside the buttons, we have to start PHP, and we have to make an array. And inside this array, we're gonna have an associate. It's actually gonna be an associative array. So let's say home, because that's what we have. And then the property home is gonna have the value of home with an uppercase. Then we also have notebook as the property, and the value can also be notebook. And that's it. We can take a look at, for example, passwords. See, the passwords have just the properties reset, and then the value is your password has been reset. Now, if you have another language, you still use the same property in another file, but you just change the value to the specific language that the folder is. And this is pretty much what this language does. So after we added this, now the buttons changed because they finally found a link, a valid link to the language folder. So let's see if it works. Let's click on home. As you can see at the bottom here is /home and /notes. Okay, so let's take a look at the notes. Okay, cool. So it's just a blank page. Now, if we go back to this MVC model, so we created a route, right? And now we are pointing this route to a function inside the node controller, like so. So this nodes points to the index function inside the controller, node controller. Let's take a look at that controller. Node controller, we're going all the way up, index. It's nothing. There's nothing in the index function. So let's see how this works. Return hi. Cool. So we are in this function. This is how we can prove it. Now, all we have to do is just, like I said, we have to use the model inside the controller and just return the process data to the view. So let me copy this really quick. So what we're doing, we're creating a variable and we are assigning all the data from this node module, node model. And this node model, it's actually this table, which is empty now. So what we have to do is just return the view nodes, and this is a file with this data that we just got from the database. Now, if we're gonna run this, we're gonna get an error because that file doesn't exist, right? That view doesn't exist yet. So let's go ahead and create it. Inside the resources, in the views, we can just create a new file called nodes.blade.php. And then here we have to extend the layouts app and also add our section of content. And let's give it another refresh. And that's it. We get our layout with the nav bar and just a blank page. If we look at the home page or the home file, we are getting this card here because of the data inside the section content. We don't have anything so far in the notes, so that's fine. If we want to echo out the notes that we get from the controller, we can do it like this. And as you can see, it's empty. There's nothing. So there's nothing yet, which is fine. So I'm going to just copy some data, some HTML, and just put it in here. So you can see also I need to add a script for font awesome and add it inside the app layout where our scripts are going to go. And when we refresh this page, we're going to see the notebook and a plus. And this is just another button. Like I said, make a new button for a route. So now the loop is gonna go again and again and again. Now that we created the button, let's click on it. So see, again, it's empty now. If we go, okay, this route, it's pointing to the node.create. Now this node.create is not like here. That's not how Laravel does it, node.create. What the node.create is, it's actually the name. Let me make this bigger. It's actually the name that we give to this URL. Instead of, okay, see how complex this can become? Instead of putting in the button /node/ whatever /update we can just call it whatever we want, update or just up, whatever we want. And just when we call this name knows what URL to use. And then this URL is going to point out to this function, update, inside of the controller. So just a quick note on that. That's why we're not getting anything. It's fine. We're getting inside this no controller and the function create, but that function now it's empty so far. So what should we do for a create? For a create function. And that's what's nice about Laravel. It comes with a lot of documentation and easy to understand. And like right here, show the form for creating a new resource. Okay, so that means I just have to return a view, right? Let's call it node underscore create. Let's see if that's gonna work. Obviously not, because we didn't create that view yet. So let's go back into the views, make a new file called node underscore create .blade.php. And then again, we have to extend the layouts .app. And we need to add a section now. Let's go. This is called the content section.
You've got a typo in layouts.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Content. All right. So when we refresh now, after we save, it's fine. It's blank again because we didn't do anything. So what we have to do, we have to create a form. And I already made that form, so I'm just gonna paste it in here. That looks like this. Now, it's just a simple form with an action to another route, of course, the store route with the post method, couple buttons. The cancel button has a route back to the nodes. So if I click on cancel, it's gonna take me back to this URL. That's gonna point again back to this function. And that's just how it goes back and forth. So let's say we want to create something now, right? Let's say project 1, project presentation with a theme. Let's click on save. Now this save button is going to run the form action, obviously. So let's click, nothing happens. Again, we clicked another button. That means we went to another route. This route now, it's the node/store route, which points to the store function, again in the node controller. So if we go to the store function now, we got some more stuff we can play with now. This function stores a newly created resource in the storage. This storage is the database. But see how we have this parameter request. If we return the request to just take a look and see what we have there. Yes, we're gonna confirm the submission again. This is what we get. We get the title and the node and a token. Now what this token is, it's this CSRF function that Blade comes with. If we take this function out and then we go back and let's refresh and do it again and try to submit it, I didn't save it. All right. Project 1, save it. Our page is going to expire because what this does, this is cross-site request forgery. We don't want other people from other browsers to just make a bot to try to push information and resources to our database if they don't have a token. So that's what's nice about Blade. It's really secure with forms, and it just makes everything safe. It just makes you feel safe. So after this is done, let's run it one more time. Let's look at the data again. So we got a title and a node, right? So this function is the store function. We have to store it somehow. How will we go about that? Well, we have to, again, take the model, right? The node, which is linked to the database, right? And instead of using insert like just MySQL, Laravel has a function called create. And then in this function create, you can either do the column name, for example, title, and then you have to specify what value for that column name. And you just say request, and you point out to the title if you want to, and that can work. Or you can do request, oh my bad, $request all. And this is just going to fill up whatever it comes from the request. There are other things you can do. For example, there is request all, request only, request validated, or request accept. But for our demo, we're just gonna do request all and just see how that works. So I save that, and let's take a look and see if that's going to work. Okay, the title, add title to fillable property. So we have to go in the note, and we didn't add the fillable, like I said in the model right here. See how he's trying to, he's not allowing it to be pushed, even if title, it's an actual column in the database, is not gonna allow it if I didn't give it permission within the application. So let's just go here, copy this, paste it in, and give it another try. All right, for the user ID, we don't have a default value. We don't really want a default value. So the store request has to give us a user ID. So the way you get the user ID of the person that is logged in, you have to run this function called auth, and this is holding everything that it's related to the person that's authenticated. We can also run the user, and this is going to point to the details in the database about that user that's logged in. And within that user, we can get his name, we can get his email, anything we want. But what we want is the ID, because we have to pass that. Now, an easy way to add this ID to the request, you can just say request user for ID, like that. And now this ID is going to go inside the request with the property of user ID. So let me not create that yet, so you can see what the request looks like now. So see, now we get a user ID besides the title and the node. So now that we got all three elements that we need to make a successful insert in the database, we can totally create it. But after we create it, what do we want to happen next? And we obviously want to redirect the user after they create a node. And when you redirect someone, let's say we want them to go back to the nodes, right? We're not going to say return the view of nodes, because that nodes view is already defined up here. So the easiest way to connect these two is by redirecting to the route that is accessing this function. So if I say redirect, I want to redirect it to a route, and that route is called nodes. When this is going to redirect to the nodes, right here, this route is going to take me to this URL, and then this URL is going to execute the index function. And within that index function, I'm getting my nodes view along with the node data, instead of me just copying the same thing over and over in multiple functions. So if we run that, continue, let's see if it got added. Okay, it got added, that's good. So that means we got data here in the notebook, but we don't have anything to display the data yet. So we can just echo the $notes that we get from the controller, and let's see. All right, so we got an array of objects with only one object, and that's how many we did. So another way we can display this is by using obviously the for else that I came up with in this view. This for else is going to take that array of objects and is going to loop through it. Okay, that's bad formatted. Let me take it from here. Okay, that's much better. Now, this nodes array is going to go through, is going to loop, and then it's going to take each object, and I'm just going to echo out the title of project number 1, and then I'm going to echo out the note. Where are you? The note. Right here, note in the card body, which is going to be project presentation with the team. So let's save this, make this smaller, and refresh, and that's what we get. We get the card. Now, another small thing I would like to do just for us so we can see it better. I'm just going to add a container and a row and a column to this main element. I'm going to push that, save it, so it looks a little bit better for us. All right, so that's pretty much it. We got to create a new note, say project 2, save it, redirect us back to the /notes, and also display the current data that's in the database. Now, let's say we want to edit this data. Again, like I said, we are making buttons, a lot of buttons. After you make a button, that's a route, that's pointing to a route. That route is going to point to a controller. So let's take a look at the edit route. As you can see, this is different than the ones above. This one has a parameter, and this parameter holds the data, the specific data for that ID, for example. So if we click on edit, as you can see down here, note/2/edit, and if I hover over this one is note/1/edit. So that number, it's the ID of the resource, of the record. And now when we go back to the controller, in the edit, see Laravel already is giving us everything on the plate. All we have to do is just show the form for editing the specified resource. And this is the key here. The specified resource is actually this note that comes from the URL. If you want to return $note, this is what we get back. Now, let's say we want to edit number 2, right? See, on the number 1, we have project number 1, project presentation, exclamation point. When we hit this, it changes. We got this specified resource that we get to work with. Now, what we have to do, we have to return, like it says, we have to show a form to edit this specified resource. So we have to return a view, let's call it note_edit. And with this view, we have to also give it some variables. So we're going to pass the note variable. And the way this works, so this can be called with data, but whatever you pass in it, in the parentheses, that's going to be the data of the actual variable that you are giving. I'm just going to call this variable note. It has nothing to do with this variable note. This is a brand new variable that's going to be passed to the view, but just with the information and the data of this variable. So let's get rid of this. That looks good so far. Let's refresh it. And then again, we don't have this view, so we have to create it. We go node_edit.blade.php extend layouts.app section of content, and then this should obviously be blank. Now we have to show the form for this resource to be edited. So I'm just going to copy this form and save it and display it. And now let's talk about it. As you can see, compared with the node create, it has a different route. This one is the update route, but it also this route requires a parameter, like you saw for the edit. The way you pass the parameter, it's in the same function of route, but you have to separate it by a comma. Now, all we have to do, like you saw in the controller, we are passing this note variable. That note variable is going to go in the value right here. And we have to say, okay, this is an object note. I want to show the title and I want to show the note for each input that I have on the screen. And then the same thing, the route of cancel and the save button. If we hit cancel, that's fine. It takes us back to the notes. If you want to modify this, let's say project 3, and then save it, we have, again, a blank page. Now, like I said, again, save, we have to go in the controller. The update is empty. We don't have anything. But now we have even more data. We got the parameter from the URL, which is the given $note. Like you can see, we get to display the note, but also we can get to display the request. And what is that request? That request is a brand new title and a brand new note and the method, but they don't really matter. They're not going to be sent to the database. Now, the way we update a record in our database, we have to use that note. We have to use that note as the model. So like we did in create, we didn't have anything. So we had to add something to the database straight up. And we had to use the model. But for this one, we already have the info of this record, of this row. We got, let's say, what is it, row 1. So we have that record right here. We can do whatever we want with it now. So instead of note create, we can do note update. Because now I'm referring specifically to this resource. I don't have to query the entire table. I already have a row that I'm working with. So in the update, I can do again request all, and that's going to be fine because the only thing that I changed is the title and the note. I don't have to change the user ID anymore because that's who the user is. Now, if the application gets more complex, obviously there will have to be multiple conditions happening here. But so far, this is going to work. Now, after this is done, we have to return the user somewhere, right? So let's just see if this is going to work. Let's refresh. So what we changed is the project 3. So this is for the ID2. The ID2 now has the project number 2. So this has to change to project number 3. Let's refresh. And if I return the $note, my bad, we get that it changed. And now instead of displaying the $note, well, we want to actually redirect again the user somewhere else. So again, let's say redirect to a route of notes. We want to just take him back to where all the notes are. And that's fine. Let's give it a try with project 1. Let's say we want to call this project 5. When I save it, it goes in the backend, it does whatever it needs to do, and it just redirects me back wherever I want. And right now it's the notes route. Okay, so the edit works. We can get a form, we can modify data, we can update it in the database, save it. But what about if I want to remove it? And when I click on this, again, we gotta go and look, use the model, process the data in the controller, and then again, return another view. So if we go to the web, we got this route called note / another parameter of note and /delete, which is using the destroy function. Okay, so in the destroy function, again, we get the $note, which is from the parameter of the URL, the specified value that we get. So this is gonna look like this. Now, we clicked to destroy the project 2. In order to destroy a record in the database, it's the same way we update it. Now that we get the $note, the $note is literally the entire row in the database, and we get to play with it. You can update it like above, or you can just delete it, and that's it. Besides this, there are a lot of other ways that I'm not going to get into. It's called soft deletes. And what the soft delete does, it adds another column, deleted at, and it can get complicated. Instead of fully deleting the record from the database, like so, it's gone now. You can use a soft delete, which is going to kind of specify. It's gonna tell that the record, it's been deleted, so don't use it. It's been trashed. That's a function, and all the records that you want to use are records that are not trashed. It's more about this in the documentation if you want to look into it. But for now, we just want to delete and then just redirect the user again to the route of notes. So right now, go back, refresh this. Well, it doesn't exist anymore. So let's say you want to delete this one. That's it. Obviously, you can make pop-up confirmations on the delete if you really, really want to delete a note. But yeah, for now, I just made it so you can just delete a file from the database like this instantly. Besides this is pretty much everything. This is Laravel. You go back and back in the loop. You gotta know how to manipulate the model like so, and you gotta be careful how you use it when it comes to updates and also deletes. Because see this $request, there can be multiple things that you are sending, and you want to make sure you either use the validated ones, or maybe you want to only update, let's say, title. Even if they change the note, I only want to update the title if you want to. There is a lot to it, but yeah, this is the basic CRUD in Laravel with using the MVC example that I came up with. So if you have any questions so far, please go ahead and ask. All right, that's pretty much it.
I don't have questions, but you did a really great job explaining this. It makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was talking, but apparently I was muted by the host. Yeah, you did a really good job of, and I know a little bit of this framework, but even you explained it in such a way that it makes me understand it even better. Like I've had trouble really understanding how the MVC all links together, and just trying to get things to work out for me. And this was a very simplistic approach, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Iosif. The pacing was spot on.
I'm glad. Thank you.
Are you able to share this slide with us?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
All right. I will also put it on GitHub, this small project, so if you guys want to go into it and play with it.
That would be great.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll give the links to Bruce, and Bruce is going to send you a message with my GitHub and this Miro board.
Along with the link to the video. So
Yes.
yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Iosif, and you can read some of the nice things people are saying in the chat. And I just, on behalf of Iosif, I'd like to thank everyone. And Iosif, I want to thank you for spending a Saturday afternoon with us all, enlightening us about the PHP Laravel framework. So thanks again.
My pleasure. Thank you.